Good evening, folks. Welcome back to another Monday night live stream. Hope everybody's nice and well. Hope everybody is fitting well as nice and well. I hope you're not coming down with any viruses, shall we say. The least said about that, the better at the moment. And I hope you've had a fantastic weekend and a lovely week since last week's live stream. So yeah, last week was a bit of a ramble. I was a bit tight on time trying to get things ready. So we have a bit of a normal ramble type thing that we have once in a blue moon. Tonight is a lot more organised. We have a subject tonight, we have a topic for the chat tonight, and that topic is the 10 most influential miniatures games of the last decade. Now, I appreciate that's probably a bit of a long-winded title, but I saw a video on the Dice Tower where they were at Dice Tower Live, Dice Tower Con, or wherever it's called, and they did basically a video talking about influential board games of the last 10 years, and I thought that would be a fantastic topic to look at for miniatures games as well, because obviously they wouldn't have covered miniatures games. So I had to think about it. Could I come up with 10 that I think have influenced the hobby, shall we say, influenced wargaming? They don't necessarily need to be the best games. They might be the best example of they might be the first example of a type of game, and somebody else has kind of taken that lead and gone on and bettered it. But they might be the games that's kind of led the way. So I will say now, categorically, you probably won't agree with my 10. Okay, we all have different tastes. We all love different games. I'm sure you won't agree with my 10. However, feel free to put in the comments if you agree, if you disagree. Tell me why you disagree. Put them down either in the chat while it's live here, or down in the comments afterwards if you're watching this back on the reruns. I'd love to hear maybe not the full 10 that you want, but tell me which games you think I've missed and tell me why I've missed them. But yes, we won't agree. Let's just get that out on the table now. This is my personal opinion, and I'd love to hear yours as well. So, without further ado, let's have a look and see who we've got in the chat. We had Peter Nicholas in, nice and early tonight. I'm not sure he's in at the moment. We also had Warforge in early as well. We've got Angry Grot in. Good evening, Clive. How you doing, fella? We've got Barry Kleiber in as well. Yeah, he's saying that he's had to check in. The time changed here yesterday, so he's all screwed up. Yeah, I think if you're overseas, over in the States or maybe Canada, I think there's some areas have had a bit of a sort of the spring clock change, haven't they? So we might be down on a few of the stateside numbers tonight. So if you're normally a live stream viewer and you're watching this on the catch up, I know why, and I'm sure in a few weeks' time we'll catch you up again. We've got Steve Evans in, fresh back from his Franticon third place finish. Well done, mate. Nice to see you picking up a bit of silverware there. Mark Cox is in as well. Hello, Mark. Christian is in as well. Keeping an eye on you lot from behind the screen there as well. Thanks, Christian. Richard Smith's in. Al Cluley is in. Good evening to you, gentlemen. Mark Berracloth's in. We've also got Al Krabby in as well. Yeah, Al was asking me today why I hadn't put Raven Guard into the thumbnail for this, and I said the reason is because the black armor kind of disappears into the thumbnail. You need something nice and bright and colourful. That's why Ultramarines and Blood Angels and Imperial Fists always stand out quite well. So yes, I'll make up for it, mate, as I said. Clive's saying there, 9 PM takes too long to come around. I've had nothing to do since 6. Randomly tonight, I actually had plenty of time to just kind of ease in. We ate our dinner a little bit earlier tonight. I've been nice and set up. I've done a bit more research for tonight. I've got notes and everything. I'm well prepared for tonight. So I probably could have done a bit earlier, to be fair. I'll say, and they're always around me. No one sees them. Maybe they are in the thumbnail then in that case. We've got Thomas in. Good evening, Thomas. Claudio's in as well. Hello, Claudio. Blizzard's sneaking in there saying, I'm here barely. We've got Antonio in as well. Says, hello, my friends. Hope everyone is doing great. I'm very well, thanks, Antonio. I hope you are too. We've got Neil Anderson in saying howdy. We've got Redwell in. Nice to see you, Redwell. Derek Hodges come in as well. Tim Kelly's saying, hey, Andy, and all right, all. Nice to see you, fine folks. Where we at? Neil Anderson, Mark Bergloth. We've got Animus Oculus in. Says, hey there, avoiding Papa Nurgle's blessing and trying out his first wet palette. Have you made it yourself, mate? Have you got a Red Grass Games wet palette? Have you got an Army Painter one? How are you finding it anyway? How are you finding it? Adam Edgar's in as well. Good morning, future boy. He says morning 40k for number 1. Well, let's be honest with ourselves. What kind of a 10 most influential games of the last decade would it be without 40k in that list? So I'm not really giving anything away by having that in the thumbnail, am I? So it's the other 9, I think, that might keep people guessing. I'm sure some of you might think that you've got some of them, but this will be where it gets interesting. We've got Warforge is back in now, yeah. Good evening, Warforge. Antonio saying you miss Kill Ball. Timothy Alacon's in saying howdy, hello mate. Tom D, nice to see you fella. Christian saying Gaslands has got to be in there. And Walking Dead All Out War as well. We'll see, mate. I told you we might not agree on all of these, but it'll be interesting. Tiberius is in, nice to see you fella. He's still awake. I'll try and keep you that way, mate. I don't want you to doze off. Aggression saying don't think I've played 10. Good evening all. I've certainly played 10 different games in the last 10 years. I've probably played 10 games in the last year, to be fair. And I've got a few. If we got have enough time, I've got a few that were kind of honourable mentions that I did consider for my top 10, but maybe fell just outside for one or two reasons. Maybe there was another game that I thought kind of deserved to place more. But we'll come on to them if we've got time. We've got Joss in as well, saying good evening from the Netherlands. Hello, buddy. We've got Palms again. Nice to see you, fella. Al Cloudy saying I'm going to guess Warcry will prove to be very influential with more fast-paced streamlining. Not saying it's good or bad, but I could see it happening. Yeah, and I think that's a key point, mate. I'm not suggesting these games are good or bad. They're not necessarily my favourite games. Some of them might be. Some of them might not be. Some of them might be games I've not even played. But have they been influential? Have they done something? Were they the first of its kind? Have they changed the way tabletop industry maybe? Less so than kind of changing people's gaming habits so much. Have they changed it? Have they kind of almost prompted other companies to kind of do, oh, well, because of this, we should do that as well? That kind of thought pattern. Think along them lines, and you'll see where my head's coming from tonight. We've got Busey's in as well. He's saying, good evening all. Glad to see the subject has nothing to do with coronavirus. Yes. What's the point? What's the point in me talking about that? I'm no expert. It's not affecting me personally this second in time. You don't want to hear me moaning about kind of people, what the situation is at work with toilet roll sales going through the roof. You don't need to know any of that stuff. We've got Peter Nicholas has come back in now. Nice to see you, fella. White Rabbit Scribe's back as well. Nice to see you, fella. He says he's morning. Good morning. Back for another great convo. Yes, mate. Thank you for joining us. Kieran Burns in, says he's watching while catching up on ironing after a hectic weekend. Nice one, Kieran. How was... I'm trying to remember now. It was you that was playing... Were you the one that was playing at the weekend, playing in the band? Somebody in the Patreon chat was, and my mind's playing tricks on me now. Peter saying to Christian there, he agrees Walking Dead All Out War is and will be a classic, and probably a precursor to many more from Mantic. Well, we'll see if it makes the list or not. Plumsy said he's doing good, lots of house sitting work all over the place, and he's starting his magazine, episode 3. Looking forward to seeing that fella. Dice Tales is saying the brews on. Nice to see you, mate. Busey says I almost expected a subject like how coronavirus will affect our hobby in 2020. It won't affect my hobby, mate. If I have to get quarantined in the house, I'll play more games and probably make more videos than I have time to do now. If I don't get quarantined in the house and all my games get delayed, I'll just keep playing the games I've already got. So let's not worry about it. We've got Honza is in as well. Says good evening from Olomouc in the Czech Republic. I hope I didn't butcher the name of that place there. Thank you very much for coming in, sir. We've got John Kellogg's in, saying he's working on a few things for Adepticon. Not long now, mate. I'm getting excited. Hoping nothing kind of puts pay to that. Adams is saying he's made his homemade wet palette, so far it's really good. Nice to see. BJ is saying, morning, folks. Apologies for tardiness. I'll give you that 5-minute slap, mate. You made it. Rusted Beetle's in. He's saying X-Wing will be there. We will see. We will see. Dicey Guy's in. Nice to see you, mate. How are you? David Moffat saying good day. All just popping in to say hello, taking off to get his kid. Stupid time change. Yeah, sorry, I can't affect the way world time clocks work. VJ is saying not sure about influential, but best game Blitz Bowl. If I knew more about it, who knows? We've got Chillin' Wargamers in. Hey everyone, nice to see you. I assume that's you, Sean, coming in, mate. For those that are tuning in now to my live stream and you're not aware of Chillin' Wargamers, I urge you to go over to Chillin' Wargamers, drop them a sub, because on Thursday this week, and I'm not sure of the time yet, it might have been 9 o'clock as well, I'm going to be on Chillin' Wargamers live stream as well with the guys there. So I would love you all to come over on Thursday night, check out Chillin' Wargamers. It'll be a kind of a random chat like this is kind of type stuff. So yeah, come over, come and check the chat out. Bring the Blackjack Army over. Make sure you're in there in the chat. Keep it nice and lively. And let's see if we can get it to the top 5 of their most popular live streams. Let's see if we can do that together. So nice to see you, mate. Thanks for popping in. Vormwood's in as well, saying hello from Finland. Hope everyone's having a good one. Neil saying, what's with the spanners and yellow logos? Sorry for the new question. No, not a problem at all. So the spanner mate, Christian, is our moderator in the chat. He's the one that looks... As the chat got a bit busier, there was a lot of stuff that I missed. So if there's any kind of bad language, anything like that, any spamming, trying to sell stuff, all that kind of stuff, Christian is the keeper of all that, and he posts any links and stuff that I need to kind of post up. The little kind of the green names and the yellow symbols are people who are my YouTube members. So if you look underneath the chat, I think there's a little... I don't know if it comes on my screen. There's like a little $sign. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel for I think it's $4.99 per month, and you get your name highlighted on there. You get access to the Discord chat as well. And the longer you are a member, the little symbol changes colour for how long you've been a member. So yes, that's what that's all about, mate. Where are we at? BJ saying Underworld will be influential. Interesting choice. Rob says, Rob Saunders, good evening, mate. I think the original Necromunda is hugely influential. Original Necromunda, it was hugely influential. I'm only looking at games from the last 10 years. So that narrowed it down a little bit. Otherwise, I think we start to get a little bit of rose-tinted glasses, and everybody starts thinking Necromunda, Mordheim, Blood Bowl, Warhammer Fantasy. They go through the whole kind of list of GW games. I think the last 10 years has been much more interesting. So there'll be a few kind of strange ones in there, but yeah, let's see if it kind of makes it an interesting chat anyway. We've got Chris Palumbo's in as well. Says good evening. And he's painting up some terrain. Kieran saying yes, mate. Denmark. I knew it was you, mate. As I said the words, I was thinking, did I get that wrong? No, I knew it was you, mate. Andy Smith in. Nice to see you, Andy Smith. Kelly Caudle's in as well. Nice to see you, Kelly. Says hello all. He's at a work conference. All week, so hobby for me. Did bring Blitzball with me. Good choice. And chilling saying, yeah, it's Mr. Spud himself. 8 p.m, dude. I couldn't remember the time, mate. I've got it in my diary, but yeah, 8 p.m. will be on. So yeah, if you haven't already head over after this live stream. Don't leave this live stream. After the live stream, head over to Chillin' Wargamers. Drop the guys a sub there, and then head over on Thursday night, 8 p.m. UK time, and I'll be on there doing the live stream with the folks from Chillin' Wargamers as well. Miniature Adventures as well said, good evening, you handsome devil. Well, thank you very much, sir. Says, just paint up his Walking Dead miles behind us Kickstarter. That's what I mean about using the stuff that you've already got. VJ saying, that's it, so bringing Bloodsport to UK. Please do, mate, that would be nice. Neil says, I can't do the dirty on you, Andy, and go to the dark side. No, mate, I appreciate that. And let's see where we're chilling saying thanks to Mark, look forward to speaking to his beautiful sexy man. I'm not sure the internet can handle both of us on the same stream, Spud. Do you know what I mean? Has that much beauty ever been in one place at one time? Who else we got? We've got Daniel Engels in as well. Quick chat while he's at quick cheers while he's at work. Thank you, mate. John Francis in. Hello to you, John. Miniature Adventure says, I think the Warhammer Quest series has been influential to the dungeon board gaming. It'd be interesting where we draw that line between board games and kind of miniature games, I think. Henry Rodriguez is in. Nice to see you, sir. And Spud saying the true sex in his clash will happen Thursday. Yes. Right, let's crack on with the topic then. So, I am mega organised, right? And let me get... He says mega organised. I need to select all of the correct pictures now. So we can kick off with the first one. And no surprises, folks. I'm sure you know that. Go across. I can't see my screen now. This is where I need to do something. Yes, you can see that. I'm sure you know that 40k was obviously going to be on the list. So I'm gonna do it first. Gets it out of the way. So then the other 9 are all going to be some nice surprises. We've got a couple of dropping in there as well. Centaurus Art, It thinks Infinity is influential. Interesting choice. And Lee Russ is in as well. Nice to see you, mate. So 40k. Why do I think 40k is being influential? What I would say is, obviously, it's the biggest miniatures game around. Of course, it was going to be on this list. It's kind of influenced the whole industry, I think, as well. But what I would say is 8th edition, which launched June 2017, had a huge impact on the wargaming industry. And I'm going to flick back to the main camera setting because I want to show something else. And this is what I want to show. This shows you Games Workshop's share price, if you like, over a period of time. And this is going back, I think, from when it first went on the stock market, I think. So you can see there is a huge spike here around 2017. And if I go back over the last 5 years, what you'll see here is this is the point here where 8th edition was launched. Now, as you saw before that, it had been pretty flat for quite some time. This little peak here, start of 2017, was when 8th edition was announced. And it started to kind of generate some kind of noise. It changed the way GW did their marketing. I think Age of Sigmar, when it launched, didn't quite hit the note initially. But from that point on, Games Workshop has kicked on and kicked on and kicked on to the point where at its peak here, we're talking 7,350 was the share price. Just prior to that, 713. So it's 10 times bigger as a business now. So let me just get that one down. So yeah, Games Workshop, Warhammer 40,000, hugely influential. I think they've managed to adapt it over the years. They've managed to up the amount of stuff that they're putting out there. The amount of stuff that they put out for this game specifically has made other companies change how they release stuff. It's made them also, I would suggest, up their content output to try and compete. So this is the first one on this list. I'm not going to go too much into 40k. Everybody knows about 40k. I'm sure you all agree, hugely influential too. So I'm going to go back to the main screen so I can then switch over to the next one on my list. And I'm sure, again, I don't think this one will be a huge surprise. Peter Nicholas is saying, 10 years ago, I had 2,000 of GW shares, but sold them shortly after for a tiny game. Anybody that had shares prior to 2017 and held onto them, it'd be worth a few quid now, I would suggest. And Al saying, I forgot about that. Al is saying, for Korax, I knew you liked you for a reason. I told you I'd make it up to you, mate. I specifically put him on for you there. Right, so on to the next one. I'm sure that wasn't a very confrontational. Was it? Is that the word I was looking for? Controversial. I'll get my words out in a minute. It's not controversial. The second one on the list is this one. X-Wing miniatures game by Fantasy Flight Games. And again, I don't think any real surprises. This was released in August 2012. And this game basically hit the ground running almost from the off. I know they have a lot of... I know they had a few kind of release issues when it first came out. Some of that is because it's Fantasy Flight and the kind of the release schedules are always a bit of a mess. I would also suggest that its success, I think, even caught a few off. The Star Wars license, back when Star Wars was popular, I suppose, was huge at that point in time. Pre-painted ships, people were picking these up just to collect them because they were so cool. People who weren't into the miniature hobby, previously maybe board gamers or card gamers, picked this up because there was no hobby aspect to it. And it certainly kind of sort of ushered in an era of quite competitive gaming as well. They completely changed the market at that point in time. Now, if you think it launched in 2012, by spring 2017, this was the game that knocked Warhammer 40k off the top of the highest sales charts. Fantasy Flight Games and X-Wing Miniatures was the biggest selling miniatures game in the world at that particular time. Now, I find that hard to believe, if I'm honest, because if we think about how big Games Workshop is, but this is a time just before Games Workshop saw that spike of 8th edition. I think they saw X-Wing Miniatures creeping up on them. It was really changing the landscape. Other people started to notice and thought, maybe we can go toe-to-toe with GW. I think at that point, GW almost kind of shifted into second gear and just took off at that point. But up until this point, it was absolutely huge. It then went on, it had a second edition, which came out in September 2018, which, surprise, surprise, was just after the point when Warhammer 40k went back to the top of the charts. And to be fair, it's still a popular game. Now, if you look at the most recent kind of top sales charts, I think in the top 5 selling miniatures, we've got Warhammer 40k, we've got Age of Sigmar in second, we've got, I think it's like the Null, is it called Null's miniatures for D&D? I think they're like the third biggest selling miniatures. Then you have Star Wars X-Wing, and in 5th place randomly, which I never expected, Star Wars Legion. I was surprised that was as big as it is actually, but maybe it's a lot bigger, maybe stateside. So I'm going to go back to the main screen. We'll have a quick look in the chat, see what people's comments are around for my second choice there. Alcyon, does 40k pull the hobby to a higher level or repress it under its massive shadow? I think it's a bit of both, mate. I think it means it's very difficult for games to get a foothold when they're new and starting out because of the dominance, but I think it also forces people to up their game, and you can't get away really with just putting a kind of a substandard game out there anymore now. That's why there's so many good games out there, I think. Where are we at? Chilling Wargamers supposed saying, yes, X-Wing was sick. I loved X-Wing when it first came out. It got a little bit kind of arms and legs, but yeah, let's not go into that bit. Christian there, thank you very much for sharing there. You're saying help support the channel from just $2 a month and gain access to the private Discord group through Patreon. Thank you very much, mate. We'll probably touch on Patreon at some point during the stream, but thank you very much. We're now at 51 Patreons, the most kind of concurrent Patreons I've ever had. I am getting ready now to go full-time with the YouTube channel. You can't see from your side of the screen. The Patreons all know about this because I was chatting about it at the weekend, but I am actually in a new studio now. It looks the same to you. I wasn't even going to tell you. It looks the same to you. But I've literally picked the studio up and moved it to somewhere else. So it's much more accessible now. It means even when I'm home alone with a little one, I haven't got to worry about having to set up kind of temporary stuff and that. And hopefully it sounds okay. I hope it looks okay. Everything's kind of sweet. So if you want to see any behind the scenes stuff, head over to the Patreon and the Discord there as well. Where Rob Saunders is there as well. I think X-Wing scared GW into sorting shit out, and it clearly worked. I think it did, mate. I think, and that's why I would. These are not in any particular order, by the way. When I say like sort of 40k first and Star Wars second, they're not in any particular order. These are just 10 random, like in random order. But I actually think that it's potentially the most influential game on the list, if I'm honest, because I think 40k is huge, has always been huge, really, and it's driven the market. However, this was the game that took it off the top spot, and I think it really did shake up GW, seeing this game getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and maybe they started to worry about their entire industry was built around plastic sort of model kits that you painted yourself, and here was a game coming out, models already built, already painted. I think it scared them a little bit into doing something a bit different. Spud saying Star Wars Legion is bonkers. It's a great game, mate. I didn't think it was as big as kind of the 5th biggest. I'm surprised at that one. Where are we at? Neil saying GW making money, but it's too much. They are forcing people to choose what to buy. I think people always chose what to buy, to be fair, though. I think that's the other side of it. I mean, did anybody ever buy everything? Does anybody need to buy everything? I think it's almost, people are maybe thinking about it differently. I think if you think you need to buy everything, I think you might need to rethink that one. That's a lot of thinking. Christian saying maybe Andy can get the inside scoop. I'm not sure what that was about. Was that something to do with Blitzball, mate? Was it? Lisa saying, I wonder if Legion sales are high due to collectors buying just the paint and not gaming with them like X-Wing. Quite possibly, mate. Maybe it is just a lot of people that don't even play the games. Maybe it's people that don't even play miniatures games in general. They just want to collect Star Wars miniatures. It could quite possibly be that. I also saw as well, I'm pretty sure, that in the same way GW do it, you know, the kind of the Mortal Realms magazine where you get a few like Age of Sigmar miniatures every month or whatever, or every week. Fantasy Flight Games have also done something similar with Star Wars Legion in France, I believe. I'm pretty sure that was what I remember now. So that maybe they kind of maybe there's certain markets where they're just a lot bigger. Henry Rodriguez says, hello, Blackjack, first time on during your live stream. I thought you'd been before, mate. I always recognise your name, but we always chat in the comments afterwards, don't we? Great topic. I agree with your first two. X-Wing brought me back to miniatures after a 10-year hiatus. Yes. I think it brought a few people back, mate. And then Henry goes in and says he's top 10. There's a few in there that I'll not read them all out now, but yeah, there's a few that will make the list. Tim saying X-Wing's great. It's a game I brought him back to the hobby. Chilling saying that Conquest gave them a massive hype and brought many new gamers in as well. Yes, I'd agree. Tim saying X-Wing 2 feels janky with the app. I've not played a lot of X-Wing 2, if I'm honest. And when I played it, it was like kind of demo games, and the app wasn't available at that particular time. Everything was just kind of written down for me, so I don't think I really played it with the app. I'm going to kind of jump ahead a little bit now. Tiberius is saying you need the garage empty for the Morris Minor. Dice Deals is saying wish the D&D Dragon X-Wing took off the same. There was a few games. There was like Attack Wing, which was the Star Trek one. There was the Dragon, whatever it was called, Dragon Wing or whatever. There was Wings of War, I think, which was the original one. So yeah, there's a few. Marco saying, sorry if I'm late to the party, what I miss? You missed the first one on the list, 40k. I'm sure you expected that one. X-Wing Miniatures was the second one. I'm sure you expected that one too. Right, I am going to dive back into the next one now. So let me prep what's third on my list. So, third on my list is Kings of War by Mantic Games. Now, this one just sneaks in at the start of the decade because it was kind of the first kind of beta rules, if you like, came out in early 2010. So this game is 10 years old now, even though it's onto its third edition. And for me, what this game did, was it kind of went up against Warhammer Fantasy, which at the time was a hugely popular game. Yes, they kind of, maybe Mantic started off kind of as a company that was producing alternative miniatures for Warhammer Fantasy, but with getting someone like Alessio Cavatori to write the rules was a really smart move. Getting those rules to a kind of like, what were they, like 4 pages long or something like that, really in the early days, was a really kind of clever move to show, like, actually, you don't need a fantasy book that's kind of 10 foot thick to be able to play a game. And give Mantic their due, they stuck at this game. They could have quite easily just kind of put them rules out, let them go, and just kept producing miniatures for other games, but they stuck at the rules. By the time second edition came out, those rules were really quite refined. And at the point when Warhammer Fantasy ended, at the end times, which I think was 2015, if I'm right, Kings of War was ready to kind of kick on and take over the mantle. And for a long period of time, Kings of War was the only rank and flank game. And I think Kings of War has been hugely influential in the fact that it's almost kicked on or kick-started a renaissance in rank and flank gaming and mass battle gaming. I think without Kings of War, we obviously saw the death of Warhammer Fantasy. We wouldn't have seen games like Conquest from Parabellum Miniatures. We probably wouldn't have seen Song of Ice and Fire coming from Sigmar. We probably wouldn't have seen some of those bigger army scale games. In an age where skirmish games are vastly becoming the norm now, Kings of War firmly kind of put its flag in the ground and said, we're kind of, it's all about rank and flank. It's that big battles. And I think, historical gaming aside, because I know people who play historical games will say, oh, we've always had rank and flank. Historical gaming's not necessarily kind of on my radar. So I apologise if I'm kind of doing your historical gaming a disservice. But within the kind of main sci-fi, fantasy, skirmish, sci-fi, fantasy kind of mass battle gaming, Kings of War has been huge. And the way that third edition has hit the ground and kicked it onto another level now, I think it just shows that there still is a place for mass battle gaming as long as the rules are nice and clean, nice and clear, and easily accessible, I would say. And I think actually getting into Kings of War myself, the rule set can first appear to be quite intimidating because the new book's quite thick. The assumption that you need lots and lots of miniatures to be able to play the game, but actually just sort of dipping my toe in and giving it a try completely changed what I thought of Kings of War. And I think that's really influenced a lot of other companies to go back to rank and flank gaming and to go back to mass battle games as well. Because I think without Kings of War holding that kind of being the standard bearer, I think skirmish games could have kind of taken over outside of the main GW games. So let's go back to the main screen. Let's see what people are saying in the chat here. I'll just dive in here. We've got Jay saying in as well from Tabletop Oddity. He says, I'm late, but don't think 40k is influential, at least not in the last decade. I think, mate, honestly, 2017 when 8th edition, was it 2017? Yeah, 2017 when 8th edition came out, it changed the market. The release schedule was unbelievable. It made everybody else look at how do we compete with this. And I think that we've seen some fantastic, we've seen some fantastic quality games since that kick-on point. We got Mark Zielinski in. Nice to see you, Mark. How are you doing? Looking forward to catching up with you at the Adepticon. He says, Kings of War, yes. And we've got Clive saying, excellent choice, obviously. I'm a man of taste, Clive. You know that. Andrew Pace is in as well, saying, Ian and Andy, thank you for keeping me company while I make my daughter's packed lunch. Great choices so far. Thank you, mate. Bit of chat between people there. Tabletop Odyssey said, Kings of War really opened my eyes to non-GW stuff. Yes. I've got to give Mantic a lot of credit for Kings of War because it was always the kind of the other game, if you like, back in the day, back sort of 2012, 2013, before there was any kind of idea that fantasy that Warhammer Fantasy was going to go the way it did. It would have been quite easy, really, to take the foot off the gas, but they didn't. They kept pushing with it, and I think it's really paid off in the long run. So yeah. It definitely opened a lot of people's eyes, I think, mate, to non-GW games. Chris is saying Kings of War was Kings of War inspired by Warhammer Fantasy or more of its own sort of thing? It was definitely inspired by it, mate, without a shadow of a doubt. It was written by the guy who also wrote one of the more recent rules for Warhammer Fantasy in Alessio Cavatore. It was based upon very similar kind of miniatures from like sort of elves, dwarfs, undead, the usual kind of fantasy tropes. But it was a much more simplified rule set. It was a quicker playing game. It was a faster playing game. And to be fair, it should have done a lot better early doors. It was just the fact that it was up against a community that was very much established and people loved the Warhammer miniatures and they loved the Warhammer lore. However, I would suggest by far and away, I think Kings of War was a better physical game than Fantasy back then. Tyrese is saying it's actually funny since Alessio was the author of Fantasy Battles. Yeah, so just say that as well. Mark saying in the beginning, 8 pages of rules, I think. Yeah, I always get mixed up because I remember when Age of Sigmar came out, it only had like sort of a few pages, like not many pages of rules. And I couldn't remember if Sigmar was 4 rules and Kings of War was 8, or if Kings of War was 4 and Sigmar was 8. Yeah, Clive saying it was a separate thing other than rank and flank. Deep Red saying Kings of War was a breath of fresh air. Yeah, I think there's many people have said that. Chris is saying he didn't join the Hobbit after Fantasy ended. I was never much of a Fantasy player, to be fair, mate. And I looked at Warhammer Fantasy, but it always looked too kind of crunchy, too deep. My local group, and I've said this many times before, always just looked to have a couple of tables of people reading books. I never really saw much move, if I'm honest. And John's saying there, he agrees with Kings of War. And he said the new Abyssal models are stunning. Yes, how far they've definitely come, mate. VJ saying there, Gaslands will be pretty influential on the whole print and play. Bring your own minis, etc. We'll see if that makes the list later on, mate. Mark's waving the beers around there, yes. Can't wave that, mate. Tabletop Oddity there saying, I like Kings of War diorama style basin. Is very cool. Yeah, I love it. And Flying Mammal's waving there as well. Good evening, Flying Mammal. How are you? So, let me get ready for the next one on the list, which is, I can find it in my list. It's this one. And it's Frostgrave. Now, this one's a bit of a left field one. And some people will say, oh, yeah, I agree with that one. And some people will go, Frostgrave, you're kidding me though, aren't you? So, Frostgrave came out in 2015. It was written by Joseph McCulloch and it was published by Osprey Games. And if you think that this came out around the same time as Warhammer Fantasy ended, It kind of picked up fantasy and that kind of campaign element outside of the mass battle games like Kings of War and like fantasy battles. It was a skirmish game as well, and it was a skirmish game at a time when not a lot of skirmish games were really around. Certainly from a fantasy point of view, I can't think really of any true fantasy skirmish games that were around then. It seemed to tap into that market of kind of the older Mordheim type of players who'd been longing for something else. As Games Workshop had got rid of their specialist games division by this point, I believe, and I think it was just something that felt it was less competitive. It was more about building a narrative. It was the skirmish games. It was model agnostic as well. For all, some Frostgrave miniatures came a little bit later on. You could use whatever miniatures you wanted. And I think it just kind of changed the hobby a little bit. And it opened people's eyes to, I think as mentioned before, like there's other games out there other than Games Workshop. I think it changed people's minds to what sort of, it just physically, it didn't always have to be a 6x4 game. And I think it influenced people, the fact that somebody can write a rule set and get somebody to publish it, and that actually could still do well. It could still be relatively successful. You didn't have to sell miniatures to make a game, if you like. So yeah, I think I'm not hugely up on Frostgrave. I've obviously done some research for tonight's video, so I'm sure I'm probably missing some of the intricacies of it. But I think it definitely influenced a lot of things that come after it. So that's another one for the list, Frostgrave. Jesse Hamill's in as well. He's saying that Frostgrave got me started in the hobby. I think it got a few people started in the hobby, to be fair, mate. Tabletop already says Frostgrave seems very appealing to D&D players, and D&D is obviously super popular. I think a lot of people did kind of maybe, if you're a D&D player and you want to branch out a little bit. I'm trying to think if the D&D board games were around then. That might have been a little bit later. But yeah, it was certainly a good entry point if you are more into almost the role playing, if you like, the right role playing skirmish games. Mark saying, yep, Mordheim replacement. Mark saying, never played it but heard many great things about it. I find now, whenever I talk about a fantasy game that is a skirmish game, somebody will say, oh, you're better off playing Frostgrave. You should try Frostgrave. It does this better than the game you're talking about, be that Warcry, be that Kings of War Vanguard, be it something else. People always seem to bring up Frostgrave as you should try this. And I think it's kind of, second edition is coming this year. So 5 years of the first edition, it's held the test of time. I just think it's almost one of those that fly under the radar a little bit, but kind of create ripples that kind of spread out and cause people to sit up and take notice and say, actually, there's a game there that did all right. Maybe there is a market for that. Tiberius has said, might not be influential, but Ambush Alley's Force on Force opened the door for Osprey Publishing, printing anyone's game book. Yeah, it's not a game I'm hugely familiar about, and therefore I guess it wasn't that influential, but that's the reason I kind of haven't included things like that. Jay's saying he didn't realise Frostgrave had been around that long. Yeah, to be fair, I've gone back and done some research tonight and looked at the release dates to make sure, first of all, that they were all in the last 10 years, because one was on my list and it wasn't in the last 10 years. Tiberius is saying that's Gaslands, Bolt Action and Frostgrave. Henry's saying, great pick with Frostgrave, that was my number 11. I like it when it was D20, which helped to bring in the RPG crowd. He said, I wish more games would go with 2D6 for resolving combat, with Wizard of the Coast Chainmail did back in the early 2000s. Chris is saying, I wonder if HeroScape could be considered influential. The modular terrain tiles and pre-painted figures made it an easy pick-up and play a game. I don't really remember HeroScape, mate, if I'm honest. Dice Tale says 2010 Castles of Ravenloft board game, if that's what you meant. I was thinking of, it wasn't Castle of Ravenloft, it was something else. But anyway, it was certainly out before Frostgrave, mate, anyway. And Christina's doing a great job there, plugging the t-shirts as well. If I see anybody at Adepticon wearing a Blackjack Legacy t-shirt, I will certainly buy you a beer. So that if that's an incentive, I don't know how much beers are. It might be cheaper to buy a t-shirt than it is to buy a beer. But yeah, there's a bit of an incentive for you. So let me get crack on. So far we've had 40k, we've had X-Wing, we've had Kings of War, and we've had Frostgrave. Let's go into number 5 now. And number 5 is, and this one might surprise a few people, because you'll probably think I've gone mad or I've got something wrong here. But it is Blood Bowl by Games Workshop. Now, why have I picked Blood Bowl? Blood Bowl was out long before 2010. Now, the new version of Blood Bowl was announced or came out, I think, in late 2010. So technically, the new version was this decade. It was 2010. It was the first new edition that had been released of Blood Bowl in 22 years. Now, why do I think that this has been hugely influential? It's less to do with the game itself, and it's more to do with what it signified. First of all, it was Games Workshop bringing back the Specialist Games division after it had been killed, essentially after Dreadfleet, which pretty much, I think, kind of petered it out a little bit. So it signified the resurgence of the Specialist Games division. If this hadn't done particularly well, we would never have got another version of Necromunda. We would never have got another version of Adeptus Titanicus. We'd never have got another version of Aeronautica Imperialis. We potentially wouldn't be getting things like Epic. All those kind of things that people are talking about now. If this hadn't done what it did back in 2010, if this hadn't sold well, if it hadn't managed to capture that market again, if the old Blood Bowl crowd had just said, look, I'm not playing your new game. You didn't want it for the last 10, 15 years. We've been looking after it quite nicely, thanks. If GW had failed with this, I don't think we'd have seen a lot of the games that we now see. And I think them bringing back older games, again, has changed the market, has influenced other people to look at picking up old IPs from other companies and redoing the rules. Look at the work that companies like Warcradle have done by picking up other games that maybe weren't doing quite so well, giving them a fresh coat of paint and bringing them back. Things like Wild West Exodus, things like what's it called, the board game, I forget what it's called, Dystopian Wars, that kind of stuff. Mythos is coming back now as well. I think if Games Workshop hadn't brought this kind of stuff back and it hadn't have been successful, it could have really, it would have very much changed the landscape, if you like. So let's have a look, see what people are saying about this one. Number 5 is alive. VG saying, Blood Bowl, Blitz Bowl for the win. Maybe time will tell if Blitz Bowl will make this list in the future. Tiberius is saying, hey, that kicked the door in for GW having proper video games. It also did as well. I mean, I know around the time they probably had things like Dawn of War and stuff as well, but I think it definitely opened. It was around that time when they were really opening up to kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like licensing and stuff like that as well. Glenn Griffin is in. Nice to see you, Glenn. He says, you got it 100% right. John said, I didn't realise how bad and clunky Blood Bowl was until I played Dread Bowl. I wouldn't disagree with you, mate. Blood Bowl isn't a game I particularly enjoy, but I can't fail to see the influence that it's had over the years. Neil saying Blood Bowl was cool. Shadow War came close to Necromunda. Even Shadow War, I think we wouldn't have seen Shadow War if things like this hadn't have kind of sort of done so well, because essentially Shadow War just used the old Necromunda rules, didn't it? And then we saw the new version of Necromunda come. Christian saying, don't forget to hit the like button. We've got 78 people watching. I'd love to have 78 likes on the video. That would be awesome. Rob saying you're 100% about Blood Bowl. So far, so good. Haven't upset anybody yet, which is pretty good. VJ saying all valid reasons, and he still think the rules are a pitter compared to Blitz Bowl. Like I say, mate, you know that it's not a game I love. That's why I want to try Blitz Bowl. I want to see what the difference is. Randomly, so Blood Bowl, when it came back, James Hewitt was at Games Workshop at this point in time, and he kind of oversaw the bringing back of the rules, if you like. I think he would say himself quite happily there wasn't a lot to do. He kind of printed it out on some nicer paper, if you like, and repackaged the rules a little bit. But he also wrote the rules for Blitz Bowl as well, and I think he's a lover of Blood Bowl, so I think there's a lot of care and attention gone into it, and I think that probably shows what you can do when you move away from an old rule set. You couldn't really move away from an old rule set with this game because it was just loved too much, if you like. They would have got a bit. I think they would have got a lot of flack if they had changed the rules of this one. Blitz Bowl, I think, shows what you can do when you allow to kind of have a little bit of a freedom box, if you like. And Stokey's in as well. It says Blood Bowl newest editions from 2016, I think. It might be 2016. It might be the way I've written it down here. It looks like 2010. I was scribbling the notes down so fast. Thank you, mate. He says he went to the World Cup in Austria. More than 1,400 competitors. Just amazing. It never seems to kind of baffle. It never seems to amaze me. Sorry, how many people still play Blood Bowl at those big events? Kieran says 5 in and not played any of them. Well, there you go, Kieran. I bet that wallet's getting itchy now. Henry Senior, reason is sound for Blood Bowl, even if I agree with VJ that Blitz Bowl is better. Dice Deal says Memoir 44 and Command and Colours games. I always think of Memoir 44 much more of a board game myself. VJ says rebooting the specialist games as GW has been a big thing. I'm not sure it wouldn't have happened without Blood Bowl though. If Blood Bowl hadn't done as well as it did, I think that might have been the nail in the coffin for that as an experiment. Jason, I used to love Blood Bowl, but it's like a math equation. That's exactly how I see it as well, mate. He said, I think it seems like it had more to do with the change in management. Yeah, but like I say, if it had failed, if everybody had just turned their back on it, maybe it wouldn't have kind of kicked on from that point. Mark says, so far agree, 5 for 5, time for some controversial ones. And Rob saying Blood Bowl and Dread Bowl are very different beasts. 100%, mate. The only thing they share is actually that there's a ball in the game. That's pretty much it. Thomas says, Jim Stewart had the will to make the decisions not to change the rules. This is something not everyone would have done. I'm not sure if he had much say in the matter. A GW, I would imagine, were probably pretty firm with, look, do not do it. Maybe that's the case. Maybe I'll ask him one day. VJ saying, yeah, spoken to James, he's a really nice guy, great rules writer. And Tabletop Audience saying, is Blitz Bowl available in the UK? Not yet, fella, not yet. Tony Howell's just in there as well. Good evening, Tony Howell. How are you doing? Right. So is that the first 5? We're gonna move on now. This one could be a controversial one. And we're gonna go with Age of Sigmar. Now, why is Age of Sigmar in here? You might say to yourself. It was the end of Warhammer Fantasy. Age of Sigmar come out. When it first came out, it was pretty awful. I think we can agree there was no points. So everything was a case of just bring what you want. There was rules in there that said the person with the biggest beard gets to go first and random stuff like that. And you get an extra dice if you ride around like a horse. It was an experiment that looked like it had imploded and completely gone wrong. However, why it's on this list? Why is it hugely influential? It was Games Workshop taking a risk. It was Games Workshop doing something they had never really done before and kind of completely changed direction. It was a whole new range of fantasy, if you like. It wasn't the original kind of sort of common elves and dwarfs that we were used to, if you like. The Stormcast came in, and yes, we can kind of laugh and say they were like kind of fantasy space marines. But to be fair, it seemed to work in the long run. Things like Caradron Overlords coming in, things like what they call Deepkin coming in as well. It really allowed them to push the boundaries, change the story up, and go somewhere completely different. But the real reason that it's on this list is because it was the first time, I think, that Games Workshop really listened to their community. Rather than just saying, look, this is the game, these are the rules, get on with it. If you don't like it, don't play it kind of thing. For me, it was the first time they really listened to the community. The community went away and they did all of their own points costs for the game to try and make head and tail of how to balance it out. It came from an audience of people who were largely used to playing Warhammer Fantasy at tournaments and events, and they were looking for some way to try and balance the game out and continue with what they really loved. And Games Workshop listened to the audience, decided to take a bit of a kind of a backward track on this, and this is when we saw the General's Handbook come out. And this was the start of influence, and I think that kind of annual update for Games Workshop, and we saw fantasy genre almost kick on from there and gather more momentum as well. It's now the number 2 selling game. There was a time where just prior to kind of General's Handbook coming out, I could honestly see 40k wasn't in a great place, and this was basically really, it was tanking a little bit, to be fair. But I think the fact that it's influential is, if if this had just been a success kind of thing, if people had just picked it up and went with it, no points cost or anything like that, we might not have seen a change in direction from GW listening to their community. They're much more, they might not react to the community as everybody would like them to, but at least they listen. They started to kick off things like Warhammer Community. Warhammer TV came not long behind that as well. They started to actually open up their social media channels again. And I think an element of that was them realising that their community actually had some really good ideas. So let's go back into the chat, see what people think of this kind of stuff. There we are. Rob Saunders is saying, I've got his fingers crossed for Blitzball in the UK. Game have just started selling Space Marine Adventures. Fingers crossed then, mate, eh? Henry says, Dice Tales, I concur that if Blood Bowl is being considered being a board game, Memoir 44 and its predecessor, Command and Colours, should be considered. And these are very influential. Yeah, maybe. Blood Bowl was a one I wasn't sure where the line kind of went, to be honest. In the same way, you could say X-Wing Miniatures game is a board game. But no, never mind. Henry says, got to run, see you later. Thanks for coming in, mate. Tabletop Audi says, AOS was the start of a new GW, but damn, it looked like a massive mistake at the time. I agree, mate. I honestly thought they'd shot themselves in both feet at the same time, mate. Chris said, Age of Sigmar is currently my favourite miniatures game. I play casually with friends, and it's a ton of fun that way. Yes. Lee Russ said, I forgot about the silly AOS rules they had when it first came out. Yeah, doing a bit of research reminded me a lot of this stuff, mate, to be fair. Rob Saunders says, I disagree that AOS was awful when it came out. It was very much a statement of intent. It was basically saying this is a light, fun game, and it got me back into GW games. I think you'll always get some people who will, no matter what, when something comes out, there will always be some people who like it and some people who don't. I think the problem was they had a huge community and a huge audience with Warhammer Fantasy that they basically just pissed off overnight. And this was so far away from what fantasy what had been. They were never going to refill that audience, if you like, with enough newcomers that it would have kind of survived it. There was a point where I think it was probably relatively shaky. I think there was probably some points where they were having to really kind of backpedal and look at what they'd done. Neil saying, this Discord stuff is making me feel old. Lots of instructions. There shouldn't be instructions for Discord, mate. It's just a case of, like, it's just a chat room, mate, isn't it? Rob says, I think they knew exactly what they were doing with AOS. I think they were always going to add the more competitive side eventually. They quite possibly were, mate, but I think the problem was it was they almost waited too long for it. I think that's the problem. Chris says, I absolutely love the high fantasy and the silly character that some models have, like ogres and grots. They did manage to kind of keep the humour in it, I would say, as well. Mark Zelinsky says, that is all I need to do to get, is that all I need to do to get a beer? You get a beer anyway, mate, don't worry about that. Tony said, it's nice to see the fantasy side of Warhammer got revitalised. I agree, AOS really shook up what had become a stale game. I think it was 100% needed, and part of the fact it was influential is it was because GW decided to completely change tack and try something different. It could have went disastrously wrong, and it was a brave move, to be fair. VJ says 100% on GW reconnecting the fan base. When I was looking at getting back into the hobby, it was part of what confirmed I was going to get back in, especially as 7th 40k was still awful. Yeah, and I think that's where they were, really. 6th and 7th edition 40k wasn't particularly great. I think 5th was kind of accepted to be pretty decent. 6th and 7th seemed to get rushed out very fast. 8th basically saved the day again, didn't it? Arthur said the small AOS starter set for 20 quid was a little masterpiece in my opinion. A really well thought out product. GW are the masters really of that entry point. Most of the companies couldn't afford to have kind of 2 or 3 different size starter sets to get people into the game. They are the masters of the entry point, to be fair. VG says, AOS was still in flux, still so connecting with the company that I felt had changed for the better. More than a specific game was what got me back. Yeah. Mark says, better to have you bring me a t-shirt to a DeftyCon. We'll see about that one, mate. Lee said, I wonder what happened to the guy who burnt his dog. I remember that as well, mate. Somebody said fight at the Dark Elf for me, didn't they? Right, so is that the 6th one? We're now on to, these ones might be Some of these might be a bit more controversial, really. That's right. There's no point putting the controversial ones up first. If I put them up first, you just go, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm tuning out now. So let's get on to another one. And this one is Gaslands. So written by Mike Hutchison and published by Osprey Games. This came out in November 2017, so it's actually not that old in the grand scheme of things. Sorry, I was reading the chat at the same time there. One of the important things for this one, or maybe two things, is one, there was no minis for this game. It wasn't even like a case of you can use any minis you want. It was you actually used toy cars for this. And in the back of the rule book, the original rule book, there was a way that basically you could scale up or scale down the movement tokens and things depending upon what the scale of the toy cars were that you were using. Now, this was something very, very different. I personally don't remember any other game that would come out that would suggest that you didn't even really have to hobby. I mean, people chose to hobby, of course they did. They all wanted to build interceptors from Mad Max. They all wanted to build kind of like cannons on cars and stuff like that, and spikes flying out of wheels. People kind of embraced that and played with toy cars a little bit, but it was very, very different. It was definitely a kit. I toyed with, do I put this and Frostgrave in? Because I think they almost fill similar niches. But the fact that this was so different was because you didn't have that miniature need. It almost didn't come from a hobby aspect. It was so simple to get into. The rules are relatively straightforward. It was the kind of game you could kind of teach kids to play. You could teach someone who, if somebody thought your painting your little men, your toy soldiers was a bit geeky, you could say, oh, well, how about we have a game of this with cars? I remember playing this with my sons with Disney cars with like Lightning McQueen and stuff like that, racing around a track. There was just so many options for it, really, and it was such a cheap entry point. You could buy the rules as a PDF. You could buy them eventually as a kind of a printed book from Osprey. The new version, Gaslands, is it reloaded or refueled? I think it is out now as well. It was just kind of fun and affordable, and it almost kind of came off the back of that X-Wing like game. That kind of almost the dogfighting that you get from X-Wing. You almost got that kind of similar feel with the movement templates from Gaslands as well. It also, in 2018, won the Best Miniature Rules by the People's Choice at the UK Games Expo Awards as well. So it's had a few awards as well for this game. So yeah, it's just so different from everything else that's out there. It wasn't just another sci-fi game or another fantasy game. Somebody had really kind of, well, so that somebody was Mike Hutchison, had really kind of gone in a bit of a different direction, and it seemed to be hugely popular. You hear still now a lot of people still love the game. So let's flick back to the main screen, see what people saying. Mark's saying there, Blood Bowl was influential. You just referenced Red Bull. How about Guild Ball? I'll come on. I'll mention Guild Ball in a second, I think. Miniature Adventures is bringing old war back for Warhammer. I think potentially this is part of, I think, the influence of Kings of War as well, is that if people didn't crave for rank and flank miniature gaming, there's no chance kind of old scale Warhammer would have come back either. So I think that's another kind of tick in the box for Kings of War, if I'm being fair. Dice Tales, let's go back there. N-Stot, you're saying Guild Ball more miniatures game than Blood Bowl and Dread Bowl, actually. Yeah, I would agree. Dice Tales says games have used toys before, Lego Heroica and assorted Lego mech building games. I think that's more Lego and less game though, mate, and certainly not a miniatures kind of game thing. I can't think of, other than people using toys as proxies, I can't think of a rule set, a specific rules written to play a game that asks you to go out and get toys, as opposed to a Lego board game, if you like. Tiberius is saying, Giza, you can use a 176 Morris Minor. Robert Zona says, yep, Gaslands, very much so. It's a very accessible game, has a rule book, about a tenner, and you can just use toy cars. Genius. I was a huge fan of Car Wars as a teen, and now love Gaslands. Lee said, must try Gaslands again. Had one demo at UK Games Expo a year or two ago, but didn't gel with me. May have had a bad demo. Quite possibly, mate. The amount of games I've been turned off because of a bad demo is unbelievable. And then you get a second chance later on, you think, oh, actually, that's not the game I thought it was. JC, and the initial problem with Gaslands was the limited availability of the specialist equipment. You didn't need the specialist equipment, to be fair. I mean, the rule book told you how to kind of proxy stuff up. You could photocopy the templates at the back. There was a reference for what a 6 was, what a, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on your dice and that. So you didn't need them, but I know people like to pimp that stuff out. They've now opened it up to allow kind of third-party companies make those kind of parts for them now. Dice DLC in Gaslands is way cool, though, like X-Wing with a race. Yes, definitely. Glenn's, I ordered the Gaslands refueled book at the weekend, waiting for it to be delivered. Hoping to make an ice cream truck or clown car. That sounds very much like Twisted Metal for me, I think. VG says, called it there. Busey says, I've heard you can even use sausage rolls taped onto toy cars for this game. And Tony says, and you could raid your kid's toy bucket. I've seen me raking around in Morrison's in the little toy section for cars to try and see what I fancied. Definitely. Dice Tail says Gaslands could really do with a list building app because I'm lazy. Blizzard is saying Gaslands probably the best future a Hot Wheels collection could have. Definitely. Too many Hot Wheels cars are in carrier bags in lofts. This is the future for them. And Dice Tail saying, yeah, just got a monster truck for my next game too. Yeah, so far, I thought I might get a few pushbacks here for a couple of controversial ones, but nothing too bad so far. Let's move on to the next one. And the next one is, if I can find my picture here, is Guild Ball. Now, I know a few of you mentioned this before, and we might be talking about it for different reasons. So Guild Ball landed on Kickstarter in February 2014. It raised £94,000, which by today's standards actually isn't that much money in the grand scheme of things. And it had 890 backers. So less than 900 people backed this game. Why is it so influential? For me, the reason I've put it on this list is I think it was probably the first, or certainly one of the first games that was funded on Kickstarter by a couple of people that just thought they could write a rule set. There'd been games like Frostgrave where somebody had decided I'm going to write some rules and then I'm going to get them published and people can use whatever miniatures they like. But there hadn't been a lot of games where basically a couple of people who thought they could write better game than was out there currently, and they thought they could get a sculptor and somebody to sculpt them, and they could get production done, and they could get things printed, and they basically off their own back basically created this Kickstarter and fully funded this game. As if that wasn't good enough, the game turned out to be really, really good. It came from a couple of guys who were big into the War Machine and Hordes community. They were big players within that. Matt Hart and Rich Loxham. And what they did was they used their knowledge from a very competitive game to basically drive that through into a game from the ground up, really, using a kind of a football type mechanic, which still had a lot of kind of like sort of fighting and battling in it as well. And what they did was they set out from the start to be a competitive game. But a lot of people fund games on Kickstarter and they get them to market, and that's kind of the last you hear about them. What Guild Ball did was it very quickly grew a very, very strong community. It wasn't a game that was made by people that were ex-GW. They weren't kind of rules writers, if you like. And they built up a really strong community and built up a really strong business. Steamforged Games now is going from strength to strength. They had a few issues with Dark Souls when they did that, but you can't say that. Basically, the product that eventually arrived was very good quality. Whether you like the game or not, or whether you're happy with the way that the Kickstarter kind of took forever to fund to deliver, is a different story. But they've gone on and they've done things like God Tier. They've done the D&D stuff, the Critical Role stuff now as well. They've done Resident Evil 2. They've done Devil May Cry as well. They've basically gone on from strength to strength, and they've turned into an established game studio, if you like. Basically, from the initial start of two people thinking we can do this. And I think what they did then is they have shone a light to other people starting up, saying, well, if they can do it, almost this kind of boutique company, if you like, if they can do it, we can do it. And from that point on, I mean, like I said, it raised £94,000. It doesn't sound like a lot of money in the grand scheme of things these days when you get games kind of like funded at £3 and £4 million. but it was back in the earlier days of Kickstarter, to be fair. I mean, this was back in 2014. That was that was like 6 years ago when this was on Kickstarter. A lot of things have changed since then, and I think this is one of the games that basically kind of kickstarted that Kickstarter generation, if you like. So, let's have a look and see what we've got. Christian there sharing the Blackjack Legacy Kings of War slow grow campaign as well. There is still plenty of time to get involved. And don't forget, we have the 1,000-point meetup in April as well. I'll be posting something in the next couple of days on the slow grow campaign Facebook page about that as well. Tony saying there that the slow grow is great fun and very supportive group too. Thank you, Tony. I appreciate that, mate. Vijay saying, so Guild Ball is to War Machine what Blood Bowl is to Warhammer Fantasy Battles. Not really, mate. Yeah, I think you can quite easily get confused by the fact that it's a sports game. Just there's a ball involved, but it's still very much it's a lot closer to War Machine than you would think, to be fair. It's got that chess element of it, of kind of thinking 3 or 4 moves ahead, very much like War Machine did. It is a sports game, but don't confuse it with like Blood Bowl or kind of Dread Bowl or something like that. It's a sports game in the loosest sense, I think. And Storty says, VGA, they're not the same universe and not from the same company. Yes, I agree with that one as well. Tony's loving the slow grow. Steve says, slow grow meetup, hurrah. Yes, Steve, I have now had a chat with the guys at Mantic about it. And anybody that does attend on the day will also get a free miniature for coming and attending as well. Mark says, Guild Ball really shook things up. People were shocked how well it did, and it was from a small company. Yeah, I think that's the bit I'm trying to get over. It's probably less about the game, how good the game was itself, although it was really good, and more to do with the fact is that it was a bit of it came from left field, really. It was from people that, they had friends in the community around War Machine and stuff, but it wasn't like they were huge players. They hadn't done anything like this before. And I think it opened a lot of people's eyes to what could be done, I think, on Kickstarter. Steve saying he's going to be there. Nice one. Christian said he's going to try and make it too. The more the merrier. We also had Thomas today as well. Thomas is flying over from Germany to come and see us. So yeah, looking forward to that. Dice Tales is saying Guild Ball was the first game I bought on a whim due to seeing models of fishermen. Yeah, the models were beautiful, to be fair. They really were very nice. Russ Charles, who sculpted those things. Oh, Thomas is in the chat there. Sorry. Hey, Thomas. Yeah, Russ Charles sculpted them. They were very nicely done. The theme and the stories by Sherwin Matthews were really good as well. They got some of the kind of their Guild Ball friends involved, people like Jamie Perkins, who was a really kind of top tier War Machine player and really understood the kind of the balance between competitive gaming. So yeah, it's one of the most influential, I think, in the last 10 years. Clive saying, ironically, the slow grow completed my fastest 2,500 points ever. And Blizzard saying, wish I could make that meet up, but it's an awfully long swim. If you set off now, mate, I'm sure you can make it. So, that was Guild Ball. Let's go to the next one. We've got 2 left, folks. How are we doing for time? We're doing perfect. We're doing perfect for time. 2 more left to go. And the next one is The Walking Dead by Mantic Games. Now, you might be thinking, why is The Walking Dead on there? Why was it really that influential? I think it was, and there's a few reasons why I think it was influential. So, 2016, this shipped out to folks after it went on Kickstarter, and it raised £686,000. So that's just to compare to where Guild Ball had been a couple of years beforehand. Now, this wasn't even Mantic's kind of most funded Kickstarter project at this point in time. I think Dead Zone, had done almost, if not more than double this when it funded. But it was the first licensed game that Mantic had done, and it came at a time when there wasn't a lot of licensed games around. I think potentially, although it might have come late, I think Night Models had kind of gone into the Batman universe, but it wasn't exactly sort of doing particularly well. People were buying the models because the models were nice, but the game was really struggling and stuff. There wasn't a lot of licensed stuff around. And I think Mantic picked the perfect license. It was at a time when The Walking Dead on TV was becoming a kind of a big thing, but they picked up the comic book license or the graphic novel license. And that was a much better aesthetic, I think, that's kind of like fitted miniature gaming. It was almost an exercise in how to do licensed products well. The game itself stuck very much to the kind of storyline of The Walking Dead. The narrative aspect of the game stuck very much to The Walking Dead and its story profile through it. The fact that they were single piece plastic miniatures was something we hadn't seen a lot of at this point in time as well. And it was pitched really from a rules point of view and from a presentation point of view as the perfect kind of gateway game of trying to bring board gamers over into miniature gaming. I also think that, where's my notes as well, what did I put? The fact that it had a solo mode and it had a co-op mode, as well as the ability to play against each other, again, wasn't something we saw a lot of in miniature games. You didn't see a lot of co-op miniature games. You didn't see a lot of solo miniature games. It was something that was just very, very different, very accessible. You open up that box, everything was in there that you needed to play. You had that paper mat in there. You had your miniatures already built and ready to go. The list building was kind of, it was more about, I just want to put my cool characters together. The way the walkers were controlled, it wasn't like I'm the survivors and you're the walkers. It was the fact that the walkers were in there being controlled by the game. It changed a lot of things. The fact it was on a smaller board size, the fact that it was just, it was very different to anything else that was out there at the time. And I think it went on to do very well. I think without the success of games like The Walking Dead, we wouldn't have seen games like Fallout. We wouldn't have seen games like Call to Arms coming out with the new Skyrim game. I think it basically opened the door for a lot of other licensed games and games with solo contingents. It showed that there were people out there that wanted to play a war game in solo as well. And I actually think it's been more influential than you might give it credit for. Let's have a look where we at now. Then let's go back and see what people are saying about it. So, Mark saying, folks said Guild Ball is much better than War Machine. I think War Machine was fantastic. It kind of tailed off at a point when Guild Ball really kind of came out. I think Guild Ball's starting to tail off now as well. And I think games like Warcaster coming through from Privateer Press. I think games like Infinity Code 1. I think even God Tier, to be fair, games like Marvel Crisis Protocol are almost kind of picking up that back end now, I think. Mark Zielinski said his son can't stop playing this one. Tiberius is saying, I'd say so, the first major push for solo miniature gaming. John France says Mars Attacks was Mantic's first license, I'm sure. It was made, but it wasn't the most popular of licenses, if you like. Certainly from a UK perspective, Mars Attacks wasn't like a really big deal. And I almost feel like the Mars Attacks was almost the precursor to Dead Zone, really. It was the next kind of stage from those rules, I think. Blizzard saying, I think my data Chris will get soggy. You can ship them over, mate. Mark saying, X-Wing got me back in the hobby. The Walking Dead got me painting. Blame Andy for that at Salute. I remember being with you, mate, when you bought that. Tiberius says, I think Fantasy Flight did well with Gears of War as a licensed game. Must be 10 years ago now. It was, mate, but it was very much firmly aimed at board gamers. There'd been plenty of licensed board games, to be fair. There hadn't been that many licensed miniatures games. Dice Tale says Starship Troopers first license, I remember. Yeah, but where's that game now as well? Also, think about Starship Troopers. You basically had the soldiers, if you like, and you had the bugs. Like, there wasn't really anywhere to go with that. Walking Dead had this whole kind of narrative story arc to go through. Tony Booth Leiden says, I had the pleasure of getting beaten by Jamie Perkins at a Guild Ball tournament a couple of weeks ago. SFG Guild Ball staff are a major part of the community. Yeah, I think they came from the community, basically, of War Machine and Hordes and understand what it's like. At heart, they're still just kind of competitive gamers. And Christian saying to John France, you're correct, however, it wasn't that influential. That's right. Peter said, I'm waiting for Warhammer Underworlds to make it to the list. Well, we've only got one left, haven't we? So will it be the last one on the list? That will it be? Angry Grot says, here's Negan is a brilliant solo and co-op adaptation of Walking Dead 2. Plus, I think I still hold the record for most games played. I'm pretty sure you do, mate. And you probably hold the record for most times killing me as well in one game. John Francis says, love The Walking Dead. The story-based expansions were very good. Oh, until it jumps over the top of my screen there and plays well in solo mode. I've said this many, many times. If I talk about gateway games, getting new people into the hobby, I always pick Walking Dead. Walking Dead is the game that kickstarted my YouTube channel. It's the reason I'm sitting here now talking to you. I've got a really kind of soft spot in my heart for The Walking Dead, and it still continues to this day to be a great game as well. It hasn't lost any of its appeal for me. Tony's saying they come to local tournaments as well. It's great to play against the guys who developed the game. It's good to see that, mate, actually. Rob's saying it looks like Walking Dead's on a bit of a decline, unfortunately. I wouldn't say it was necessarily on a decline. I think it's gone through a bit of a quiet period. I think that Call to Arms maybe hasn't been as successful as maybe we would like it to have been, or Mantic would have liked it to have been. But we've got the new, the kind of the annual or the compendium thing coming this year. There's some more waves of Walking Dead to be coming as well. I think it's maybe past its peak popularity, but I wouldn't say it was in huge decline at this stage. Tony saying didn't know it had a solo option. I may need to take a look in The Walking Dead. It does have a solo option, mate, and I think I've got a video as well on my channel showing you how to play it solo as well from many years ago. Clive saying Mars Attacks was hugely successful. It just ran its time, and licensing doesn't last forever. Yeah, exactly. It wasn't nearly as successful, I think, as Walking Dead has been, for example. And I think the license itself wasn't the draw that maybe the Walking Dead was. From a UK perspective, I know Mars Attacks is quite big over in the States, but I think my experience of it is just the movie with Pierce Brosnan and Jack Nicholson. And Busey saying the only problem I have with this game is trying to get the minis back in the box of their molds. You're supposed to take a picture before you take them out, mate. That's what I did. Tony saying Solo's great and cheap to get into. Mark saying Solo, yeah, discontinued, blah, blah. Peter says, why don't the Walking Dead minis fit in their recesses once they've been removed? They do. You need to take a picture of where they go. I've got the Kickstarter version, and I can't even remember how many there is. There must be about 80 minis in that tray, and I've got to take a picture before I take them out. Otherwise, it is a weird game of square peg round hole to get them back in again. Where are we at? Tom Ryan says, you try Starbreach yet? I haven't actually played it yet, Tom, but I was kind enough by the guys at is it Death? I forget the name. Not Death Ray Games. I forget the name of the company now. That's awkward. And the guys from the company sent me over the rules for the game, actually. Like the one that you have to pay for, not the ones that's free online. And I've been reading through those, and it seems really interesting. I've just not had a chance to play it yet, to be fair, but I will do. And if I haven't had a chance to play it before Adepticon, I'm definitely getting a demo of it at Adepticon and meeting up with the guys. Slow Death, that's the one. I knew Death was in there somewhere. Yes. So yeah, I haven't played it yet, but I have been reading the rules, and I'm impressed with them. Palmsy saying, I actually have The Walking Dead with me while I'm away, hoping to get some solo games in. It's a game that I always keep going back to. There's very few games that I will always keep going back to. I'll play a game for a while, and I think I'll play it until I've had enough of it, and then I'll move on and I'll find something else. The Walking Dead's a game I keep going back to. Jason and I were having a few beers a couple of weeks ago and said, we need to get together and have another game of Walking Dead. We haven't played in ages. So yeah, it definitely kind of stands the test of time. Tony saying Mars Attacks is a cracking game. So Clive there saying there might be some more Negan stuff to come as well. I think there's some Negan stuff in that new compendium book as well. Bloggy's in as well. He's saying, hey guys and girls, unfortunately late because of daylight savings messed with the schedule. And VJ saying he's on the train about to hit the dead signal zone. Later all, have a great week. Take care, VJ. Right, so we're coming up to 20 past now, so I should crack on really and get the last one out. And the last one, where are we at? Let me find my picture of the one I want to talk about. This is the last one. This one might be a little bit more controversial, I think. And it is War Machine or War Machine and Hordes. And it did come out prior to 2010. However, January 2010 saw the launch of Prime 2, which was the second edition of War Machine. And this was the point when the game really did kind of hit critical mass, if you like. Now, why this was so important was it really influenced a different mentality within wargaming and within miniature gaming. It was very much designed to be competitive. I mean, the whole page 7 thing, for those that basically know about this, on page 7, right at the bottom of that page says, play like you've got a pair. It was really aggressive. It was intentionally kind of confrontational, and it was intended to be a competitive game from the off. It also wasn't as much about hobby as a lot of other games were as well. So it was quite common to go to a popular kind of event, like a big War Machine event. There'd be some new releases of models. People would go and buy those models, glue them together, and get them straight on the table and play with them in that event. They wouldn't have bothered painting them. Some people never painted the miniatures. There was never a painting requirement for the game. It just changed the mentality and brought people in who maybe weren't that interested in painting miniatures, weren't that interested in kind of collecting the miniatures, but really wanted, just reading Mark's comment there, but really wanted to play and be competitive with the game. And I think what they did really well with their Steamroller packs, which was their kind of like their annual tournament packs basically, I think they basically influenced the rest of the market about just how popular tournament gaming was, how important it was to take tournament gaming seriously, and how big the kind of tournament scene was, and also about how important it was to keep refreshing those tournament things, not just kind of churning out the same kind of like the same event time and time again. So I liked the game when I used to play it. I think by the time it hit 3rd edition, it had lost its way a little bit, but around the early 2010s, I think it was hugely influential. A lot of people, so this must have been around 6th edition fantasy, a lot of people were becoming very, very much kind of, a little bit kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Disillusioned, I think, with Warhammer Fantasy. They loved taking part in the tournament scene. The game wasn't in a very good place. The rules were all over. It wasn't particularly balanced. And a lot of that Warhammer Fantasy scene moved over and started playing War Machine and Hordes. And there was a huge big scene of people travelling around all over the UK specifically. We had the big European Team Championships. We had the UK Championships, where hundreds of people were getting together to play War Machine and Hordes. Certainly influenced people like Jimmy Perkins and people like Matt Hart and Rich Loxham, who went on to do Steamforged Games and Guild Ball. It was a very different mentality of game. It was designed around tournament, serious play. So yeah, let's and somebody's just saying there. I just noticed Rob saying first tabletop game, and it was a brain workout. It was like a game of chess. It was about thinking 3 or 4 moves ahead, and it was really, really thinky, if you like. Let's have a look. Let's pop back into the chat now and see what people are saying about this last one. I think Tiberius is saying you better film that game. Now I've got this nice set now, mate. Cameras above me and stuff. It'll be perfect. I'll film everything I play from now on. Thomas says Warhammer Horde's the only game where being that guy gets you winning. Yes. Now I'm not saying it was all for the better either when I'm saying about that kind of competitive and very confrontational thing. It wasn't all for the better, but it certainly changed tournament gaming, I think. I think it moved tournament gaming away from being much more a casual meet-up, and it was about winning, which was, like I say, not necessarily like the best thing, but companies always did take tournaments much more seriously after that. Jay saying, how much do you think Warcaster will impact Warhammer Hordes, War Machine and X-Wing? I think we're the first proper competitors to our Lords and Saviors GW. I think Warcaster has the potential. I think in the same way Steamforged Games knew that kind of Guild Ball had kind of reached kind of its peak and it was coming back down the other side of the hill, if you like, and they released God Tier. I think Privateer Press are doing exactly the same thing with War Machine. I think they're going to continue to support it, but I think it's seen its better days, its best days are behind it, and I think that Warcaster, they're hoping will pick up that crowd and carry them into buying more Privateer Press miniatures. The gameplay, I'm not that sure about. I've watched the playthroughs for it. I haven't backed it personally. I'm hoping to get a demo of it at Adepticon because I do like the miniatures and I hope it plays better than it looks. But yeah, I'm not sure, mate. I don't know whether they've left it too little, too late. Tony saying I got the War Machine from the start because I love the minis. I still love the minis, but I've never played the game. Beyond War Machine Light with my son. It's a great game. I'll be honest, when I played it, I used to love playing it. It really is a thinking game. You do have to kind of plan your moves out, and it's almost like that kind of checkmate moment of if I move here and then this does this, as long as I take that out, I create a gap that my caster can come through and it can kill your caster and it's game over. It was a really kind of tactical thinking game. The only thing I would say is, and Guild Ball suffered from this as well, is the good players destroyed anybody that was just trying to start out. Daniel Engelson just got home. I have to watch later to catch up. Thank you, Daniel, for popping in. Tom says, War Machine is on life support. Warcaster has brought back hype to privately oppress. I just hope it's not too little too late, mate. Al Crabby says, I think if GW released a pre-painted army, they'd see a huge surge in entirely new players because there are heathens who don't like painting. Just basic stuff, the more specialist armies as are. I think that's exactly where contrast paints has come in. I think that's their way to try and say, look, just get some paint on it, kind of thing. It doesn't have. I mean, let's be honest. You don't have to paint your miniatures. There's a bit of pressure from people to say that you should, but there's no rules that you got to paint your miniatures. If you want to play with grey plastic, play with grey plastic. Doesn't look as nice, but that's just my opinion. Like, don't let anybody tell you how you should do the hobby. Games Workshop will tell you need to have painted miniatures to play at Warhammer World. That's just because that's their rules. It's their house, their rules, kind of thing. But you shouldn't feel obliged to paint your miniatures if you don't want to. It's your money. You spent it on your miniatures. You can do what you want with them. Neil says GW need to make sure they don't meddle too much in rules. I turned off Kill Team for this. Turned off Kill Team. Maybe I missed the point of that one. I don't know whether it's something to do with further back up the chat as well. Tom says there is too much that's meh about Warcaster. I'm not keen on the card mechanics, if I'm honest. That's what's turning me off. I'm not really into like deck building and stuff, and I'd much rather it didn't have that aspect to it. Kieran saying 1 out of 10. I'm so out of touch. Agree to some of the reasons, but I don't know if there are some as influential as thought. Maybe in some groups they are to others. Tom says $200 plus and 4x4 are both negatives. I would have liked to have seen a smaller play area, if I'm honest, as well. Christian said, I'm surprised Malifaux wasn't on the list. Do you know what it is, Christian? I've got my honourable mentions, and it was on the list originally. It was on the list in place of War Machine. The reason I took it off was because when I did some more research, it came out in 2009, and that was why it wasn't on there. That was the only reason it wasn't on there. It didn't come out in 2010. And then by the time the second edition came out, I wasn't as keen on second edition. But I think Malifaux was definitely game changing. From the quality of the sculpts was at a different level that we hadn't really seen before. The very much scenario based missions, which weren't about kill each other, were a bit of a change. The card mechanic was something that we hadn't seen instead of dice. It was a really kind of a big departure from it. And just the fact that it didn't fit into any of the kind of stereotype. It wasn't standard fantasy. It wasn't sci-fi. It wasn't historical. It created its own genre. And I think that opened the door to a lot of other games down the line. Games like Wild West Exodus, games like Mythos coming along now. There's a lot of games that have, like things like Carnivale. Those kind of games, I think, almost tread on the toes of Malifaux before it, I think. Tabletop Oddly says, I don't have the interest in a medium-sized 4x4 table Warcaster right now, but I'll be happy to wait and see. Yeah, I know what you mean. 4x4 is not that big, though, is it? I mean, let's be honest, it's maybe a bit big for skirmish, I think. That's what I would say. Peter says, I'm surprised Purple People Eater wasn't on the list. JC and Legion's quite good for not painting minis. The Tawny rules say you don't have to, so you don't have to do it. However, people will mildly mock you. The same thing happens in Underworlds as well. I mean, they come in coloured plastic, but like there's a lot of coloured plastic in those kind of tournaments with people who have no intention of ever painting their miniatures. Al says, I imagine within the next 3 to 5 years, once the mainstream push is rolling along, they'll release pre-painted army in a box style stuff. I don't know if they will, mate. I don't know if they will. I don't know if that just goes against their whole ethos, really. It'll be interesting, though, won't it? I think the other side of it is that I've got no idea what the costs are to have stuff pre-painted. Would they kill off huge parts of their business, if you like, by just selling pre-painted stuff? Daniel says, back to painting more of my Bone Reapers tonight. Got 2 weeks to finish the army. Feeling distracted by Warcry. Just think that you're painting them for Warcry, mate. That'll be the way to do it. Christian said, interesting. I didn't realise it came out so long ago. Neither did I, mate. Hence why it was on the list originally. Peter says, I have based some Noblars. Where can I use them? Noblars. You can use them in Warcry, mate. You can use them in Warcry in an Ogre's army, that's for sure. So, honourable mentions here. I've got 3 games I would say as honourable mentions. One is Dead Zone by Mantic. Terrain was kind of in with the box. It was a critical part of the game. It became because of 3-dimensional. The fact that you were going from cube to cube rather than measuring with a tape measure. The only reason I don't think it's been that influential is I don't think it's really changed anything. I haven't seen other games using the same like kind of sort of rules, if you like, using those kind of same techniques so much. And I honestly thought it would have became bigger. I think it's a really good rule set. I thought it would have been bigger, and I thought that it would influence others to do similar things, and it hasn't. But I still think Dead Zone is whilst it might not be influential, it's definitely what's the word I'm looking for? It's unique, if you like. It was quite groundbreaking, if you like, in the fact that it departed completely from the rules that had gone before it. I've got Kill Team on the list as an honourable mention. The reason I think it was influential is the idea it moved away from standard board sizes. So those 32-inch by 24-inch, whatever it is, I can't remember now. They moved away from those standard 3x3s, 2x2s, kind of square mats, if you like, was really interesting. And I think that obviously Warcry followed in suit. I think we see the starter sets for Infinity also use a similar size, and I think Code 1's going to use a similar size. And I think it opened up that idea of coffee table gaming, having a game on your lunch break, having a game on a card table in a gaming store. So where gaming stores, where they come to miniature games, would normally take up huge big tables, you could get like 3 games of three games of Kill Team on like a normal size kind of card table, if you like. So I think it potentially kind of it's been influential, but maybe not as much as some of the others on the list. And the other one I put as a kind of honourable mention was Warcry as well. Similar reasons to Kill Team, but mainly because very simplified rules, taking away that kind of the wound mechanic that you just roll a hit and that's it. It's done. Really stripping back the rules, but in creating a really fast-playing, fun game that doesn't rely upon kind of stuff that's gone before it, and a real strong narrative focus to it. Has it been influential? I think it's too early to tell. That's why it's not on the list. Nobody else has really followed suit by kind of stripping their rules right back yet. But maybe in 3 or 4 years' time, we might feel very differently about it. So I think it's potentially one for the future. I don't think it's influenced anything too much at the minute yet, but maybe it will do. Angry Grot says, would you have Kill Team if it wasn't for Dead Zone? Special board size, tick. Skirmish, small squad, tick. Sci-fi, tick. Scenery and small sets, tick. I think there's been some influence there from Dead Zone potentially. I think it doesn't use the height the same way Dead Zone does with the movement and stuff. I think scenery in a box isn't something new to Kill Team, or to be fair, isn't something new to Dead Zone either. I think they'd done other starter sets prior to that, had they? Maybe I'm remembering that wrong. But I think it's a shame Dead Zone isn't bigger. Because the biggest reason people say they don't play Dead Zone is because there's not enough people playing it. And I know that's a cop-out and it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If nobody plays it, nobody plays it. But I wish there was something to get a hold of people and get them to get back into Dead Zone and give it another try. Because it is a very good game. And it's just a shame that it's not as popular as it could be, I suppose. Aaron saying, did I miss the list? Yes, sorry, buddy. If you're overseas, you've probably didn't realise that was an hour ago. Sorry, you're an hour behind or an hour ahead. Christian saying, I may need to pick up Dead Zone again. There's some really nice 3D printed miniatures I could proxy for the regular models. You could also print out some very nice scenery for it as well, mate. Rob saying, Dead Zone's amazing, one of the best streamlined skirmish games ever made. I do agree with that, mate, to be fair. And Rob saying, I think Warcry is pretty close to it. Yeah, I would agree as well. I think it is pretty close to it. I think Warcry also trades a lot on Vanguard as well, to be fair, with the dice mechanics. So, yeah. And Aaron Brown says, Drat, sorry, buddy. Yeah, but we're about finished now anyway, so you'll be able to go back and start from the start. So that's my 10 choices, folks. Is there anything controversial in there? Is there anything you didn't expect to see there? Is there anything you expected to see there that you didn't? I'd love you to come back when the video is finished. Give me your thoughts in the comments. It really helps me out. The more comments I get on a video, the more it kind of triggers YouTube to share it out to more of my subscribers, and it generates a bit more views, and it helps get the Blackjack Legacy word out there. If you have enjoyed tonight and you want to kind of support the channel and the future of the channel, as I mentioned before, this is now my new studio. Is all set up, raring to go for when I go full time with this in the very, very near future. If you want to support that, at the minute, Patreons will be my wage. Everybody that supports me through the goodness of their own pocket is basically paying to put the lights on and put the roof over my head kind of thing. If you want to help with that, please do check out the Patreon page. Your pledges start from $2 a month. That gets you access to the Discord group. From $5 a month, there's extra benefits as well, all the way up to $20 a month, where you can get free t-shirts, you can get free mugs. The mugs, actually, which I've now got. These Legend of Legacy mugs. And it also says 6 months of supporting that Northern Monkey. So anybody that's ready for these ones, I'm getting these boxed up and getting them sent out in the next few days. You will also get access to the brand new podcast as well that starts this month. Anybody that is on $5 and above, I think it is, gets access to the podcast. So please do consider checking out the Patreon, even if it's a one-off payment. If you just want to kind of, as a little tip, buy me a cup of coffee to say thank you. All of that is hugely appreciated. Steve says, we will only see it at the weekend. If Dead Zone or Dreadball were GW games, they'd be huge. I agree, mate. I agree. Blaze was thinking Warhammer Underworlds would be on the list. Yeah, you just can't get more than 10 in the kind of, can you? Angry Gross saying, let's just spam comments. Go. Daniel saying, all set for Adepticon, Andy. Pretty much so it, mate. Pretty much so it. Neil saying, how much notice do you have to give at work, Andy? I have to give 3 months notice, mate. So I'll be completely honest about this. Essentially, my plan is to hand my notice in May, as long as nobody from work is listening at this point in time. Because basically, that takes me up to the point where at the minute, in the background, I am saving every penny I earn to build up a buffer of cash for when I start and go full time. So if there's any emergencies, if something happens, we need to fix something in the house, or like all of a sudden my camera breaks or something like that, I've built up a buffer of cash that will get me through a long period of time. And then hopefully by the time I do full time and I start doing more videos and more stuff, hopefully that will create a bigger kind of Patreon crowd as well, and then that will start to help for the future. But that's essentially all that stopped me at the minute, is building up that cash buffer. I'm kind of like on a month by month basis. I'm kind of like doing all the calculations. I'm all on track for that. The only thing stopping me doing it and handing my notice in now is basically building up that cash buffer. So I need to build that up first. But that's all on track. It's all I'm going to plan. So yeah, that's what I need to do. But to be fair, mate, who knows what happens if I hand my notice in? They might just say, yeah, just go now. You know what I mean? So I might actually get started earlier than that. And obviously I'll be on wind down by that point as well. I certainly won't be travelling as much. So for all, I'll have a point where I go full time. The content will start to ramp up very, very quickly from the point where I make that change. So yeah, that kind of gives you some information about what's happening. Where are we at? William Jones is saying, don't get quarantined in Chicago. There's worse places to be quarantined, mate, to be fair. Peter saying, Warhammer Fantasy was a GW game, don't forget. Yeah, I don't think we can forget that one, mate. Neil saying, wash your hands, team. Dice Dale saying, no Corvus Belly. I'm a fan. I'm not sure it's been influential, but it'll certainly come up in a few more topics soon, I think. And Aaron saying ARO for the win. It's one of my favourite mechanics in a game, that's for sure. Liberia says, in this boom period of bumper shit paper sales, he chucks it in. To be honest, mate, I am hanging by a thread at the minute from my mental health is hanging by a thread by having to go to this job every day. I absolutely hate it. So the quicker I can get out, the better. So don't you worry about that, mate. I don't make any more money if we sell lots of toilet rolls or not. And Tony saying, very best to you. You got my support. Thank you, buddy. And Peter says, Annie intends to jump ship just as they approach Treasure Island. Well, folks, on that Treasure Island and buried treasure comment, we'll say goodbye. So thanks everyone for coming tonight. It's been nice to have a kind of a topic that's lasted the full night. I don't often get those ones. Chat's been great tonight. Please do come back to the video. Give me your comments. Let me know if you like these longer form chats, if you like these these bigger topics. Let me know what you think I've missed. Let me know which ones you agree with or you disagree with. And I will see you all in next Monday's live stream video. See you then.